Awesome. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give it another minute or two here just for those, just to make sure everyone can get in before we start. So thanks for joining early. But like I said, just another couple minutes here. Thanks. Awesome. I think we can get started here. The beginning few minutes just going to be housekeeping items anyway. So people rolling in right now won't be missing too much. So awesome. Thanks everyone for joining us today for our 1 hour webinar, Managing Your FinTech Fear, the Future of Automation, AI, and ChatGPT. I'm Sam Maxwell, part of the marketing team here at MHC, and I'll be facilitating today's discussion. Our speakers are Ernie, Humphrey, and Adam Shilton, who I'll be introducing shortly. First, just wanted to go over some housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and attendees will receive a follow-up email with the link to the recording on our website. All participants are muted to prevent any background noise. So if you have any questions, just please type that into the Q&A section. There will also be a post-webinar survey that will appear when the webinar ends. Please use this survey to let us know how we're doing and to request any additional information so we can follow up accordingly. We really appreciate all of that feedback. And then just another quick reminder for all attendees, you will be receiving 1 CEU for attending this via IOFM. Great. Ernie, you want to click to the next slide for me? Great. So now to introduce our wonderful speakers for today, we have Ernie Humphrey. He serves as the CEO of 360 Thought Leadership Consulting and Treasury Webinars. Treasury Webinars has delivered thought leadership webinars to over 20,000 Treasury and finance leaders across the globe. Ernie was a driving force behind Proformative, formerly the largest community of longtime Treasury manager, and formerly served as the Director of Treasury Services at AFP. His ebook focused on career management and was recognized as one of the top 10 ebooks for CFOs in 2018. Ernie was also named one of the top 20 pioneering CEOs by Tech Magazine in 2020. Ernie also has a bachelor's and master's in economics from Purdue University. Adam is a finance and tech thought leader with 16,000 followers and successful Tech for Finance podcast. Adam has more than 8 years of experience in the tech space and has helped hundreds of finance pros maximize the value they create for themselves and their businesses using technology. Awesome. So now I will hand it over to Ernie and Adam.
All right. Thank you very much. I also want to thank my friends at MHC for the opportunity to speak on this webinar today. They certainly share my commitment to thought leadership, so I reached out to them regarding the topic that we're going to talk about today, talk about managing our FinTech fear. And just kind of a little background on this. I mean, myself, I kept seeing all these things on ChatGPT every day, AI, and I'm usually very receptive of technology, and I was actually getting a little scared myself. So I'm looking through all these guides, and I see, what am I going to do? What am I doing? What am I missing? And then I kept seeing there's this guy, Adam Shilton, and this guy has some really good stuff. I think I want to reach out to him and see if he can jump on a webinar with me and really help us alleviate our fears. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a lot about, first we're going to talk about a little tech terminology here. So we're all going to level set here. Adam's going to do that for us. And then we're going to talk about ChatGPT, and Adam's going to give us a 101. He's going to talk about the opportunities and some caution that we might need to be going into as we explore this technology. We have to understand what we're doing, right? We've all been there. We've gotten a little new toy, gotten carried away with it, and can do some damage you weren't intending. And Adam's going to share with us how to right size your tech game. Adam's going to share with us some of the folks he follows and some of the great resources that he has. So this is incredibly valuable for you. Been vetted by Adam. He follows all these people, and I do as well. So you're really getting some really good vetted. That's a new word, Adam. Vetted content there. And then I'm going to jump in and really talk about, all right, how can we leverage AI and automation in the AP space? I'm going to talk about some survey results, what strategic AP looks like, what the ROI looks like, what are the dimensions of the ROI done right, and then wrap things up with some recommendations. So first, we're going to have Adam and I are going to have a little chat. First of all, Adam, let me formally welcome you to the webinar. Thank you for taking the time with us, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Yeah, I must apologize. We were discussing earlier. I'm suffering with a cold, so if I sneeze accidentally, please ignore me if I don't quite get to the mute button in time.
All right, Adam, let me start with this. And you and I have talked. It's interesting. So can you give us, before you go into the tech terminology, can you give us your motivation for making this really career shift and focusing where you're at in tech finance? Can you give us that background? I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I've been working in the tech space for a while. My first job was actually in the property space before I moved into tech. So I did a lot of work with Microsoft around sort of ERP and some of the Dynamics applications. And then increasingly started speaking more and more to finance teams who seem to be stuck on repeat, month-end repetitive activities. And then, like many of us, got sucked into the whole sort of AI piece. So I've been doing, I wouldn't say a lot of work with AI, but definitely a decent amount of work with AI before ChatGPT was released last year, but in its sort of more basic sense. So on the slide there, you can see the concept of machining and deep learning. So I was aware of these concepts and using them in some of the applications that I specialized in. But then, of course, AI became generative last Christmas, so I lost my Christmas to it, and ever since have been trying to demystify it for finance teams, because it's I'm a nerd by nature, so I thought if I'm learning, I might as well bring along people for the ride. So that's me.
All right, can you just give us? I know it's a tough question to be succinct on, but can you give us just very high level main differences? Like what is RPA versus AI, and then just so people level set. A lot of these times these terms are used interchangeably, and I think we need to be careful there.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you see on screen there, I mean, they're not in any particular order. Some of them are related, some of them aren't. So the concept of robotic process automation has been around for years now. And the example that I always use was when I got my first ever Mac computer. There was an application on it called Automator. And what you could do is you could set it to record, and you'd move your mouse about, and you might type a couple of keys on the keyboard. But then when you hit stop record, it would replay your activities. So it would do all of that clicking and all of that typing for you without you having to do it yourself. So that was my first ever introduction into the concept of a robot doing any sort of automation for me. Sometimes RPA and AI are related, but they can be totally separate. So a very simple example of robotic process automation could be exactly what I've just said there. In a business sense, we are essentially chaining together commonly done activities. So another example could be data import or data export, for example. If we're taking data from one system to another, we might have a human doing it, but that's not productive use of time. So we set up a robotic process basically to emulate what the human does and do that repeat work. Fundamentally, RPA is really good if there is a set structure. So if you can map precisely when this happens, this needs to happen afterwards. The biggest difference between that and then moving into machine learning and more of the generative AI space is that we have a lot more variables. So the word that always springs to my mind is more of a creative element. Yeah. So when I was doing a few articles about this in the past, I referred to RPA as sort of a digital pair of hands and AI and machine learning as a digital brain. Yeah, so AI is meant to emulate more of a thought process than it is just trained to repeat a manual process. All right. When we start getting into the generative space, this is where, the whole sort of ChatGPT and GPT type AI came in, whereby it's trained on a huge amount of data. And that's what large language model means. It's basically a massive data set that you can chat to, and the AI will then produce an output. The difference between something that's generative and a set robotic process is that you could ask generative AI the same question 3 times and every time get a different answer. Whereas with robotic process automation, the output is always the same because it will only work within the limits that you've given it. So hopefully that's okay at a high level. I guess generative AI is a form of machine learning. So, machine learning, deep learning is related to generative AI, but RPA is totally separate.
All right. So this is just some of the questions I wanted to give you guys. So these are kind of the things that I had in my mind. We might not get to all of these during the webinar. If not, look for content from Adam and myself. I'll definitely have him on again for the whole hour, or if not more. So some of the things I've been thinking about, everyone, you see it. Will technology eliminate my job? Will it eliminate my entire profession? I've seen things like it's going to eliminate 80% of all jobs and things like that. Is tech knowledge a competitive advantage in your career? How do I know what I need to know? How do I leverage tech to empower my team? And how do you stay on top of your tech game? So we're going to actually touch on several of these, but I just wanted to kind of get those out there. And this is a picture of the supercomputer, quantum computing. This looks like what I have in my house. No, not really, but Adam might have one like that in his house. So just to get your thoughts going. So let me go ahead. I just want to flip out a polling question for you guys. Comment on this. I really want to do to set up the context in terms of staffing. So in terms of 2023, have you added staff, reduced, both added and lost, or had no changes yet? I'm going to share with you some results that I've seen on my own polls, and I'll look at AP, AR, and Treasury staff, and then I'll have Adam weigh in. We'll take a look at the results, and then I'll get his context on, what he feels is. Are we is there too much hype there, or is it not quite that simple on how things are going to shake out? So I'm going to go ahead, leave the polling question up give you guys another few seconds. Please, everyone, just take a minute, push the button. We sincerely appreciate that. I know if you'd like to get credits, CEU credits, or have a certificate of attendance, you're going to need to answer all the polling questions. So I'll give you guys another few seconds, then we'll go ahead and take a quick peek at that poll and see where you guys are at. I'm going to give you the 3, 2, 1. All right, perfect. All right, let's go ahead and share those results real quick. So you see, right? I mean, we're not seeing all these companies are shedding all these jobs. Now, there is 17%. We don't have a huge sample size there, but the point is you've had 23% adding, right? And so no changes. And so I think this to me shows obviously a really small sample size. So it's hard to generalize, but I think there's been too much hype there. And my opinion has always been that part of it is about key professionals redefining their value proposition and taking advantage of having more time. Because the big value of especially the RPA side and automation is you can give you back more of your time and not waste time on unvalued activities. So thank you for answering the polling question. So let me go ahead and make sure what I've got up there. So again, I've done several polls. So we said AP in 2023, what are we going to do? We're going to add employees, 39%, right? Only 3% decrease. AR, 35% add, right? Only 3% decrease. Treasury. So across the office of the CFO, we're really seeing a net addition of employees, even though there's a lot of adoption, especially in the mid-market space of these technologies. So Adam, what are your thoughts here on the dynamics of employee movements in the office of the CFO?
I think we always need to be mindful that we've got the right people doing the right things. So keep the same number of staff stats being the highest doesn't surprise me. The worst of what I'm seeing at the moment is people just moving around.
Yeah.
So the whole point of technology is that we can shift to focusing on the stuff that produces the most value possible.
Yeah.
So since the beginning of time, the whole premise of tech is not to have to let people go, but to repurpose people so that they can do better things. Yeah. So that's my perspective, and I think the stats.
Yep.
All that.
All right. So before we jump in here with our ChatGPT 101 for finance, I want to get your perspective. I have mine, but why do you think ChatGPT really did such a spark, or it really just kind of exploded and it went across tech? I mean, it went to finance, treasury, it got on the news, right? I never saw, AI. Do you have any thoughts on why you think this just completely really took off and went viral everywhere?
Yeah, I think obviously it had some early stage investment. So OpenAI, when they first released it, was a non-profit, I believe. And Elon Musk had a stake in the business. I don't know the full story, nor do I profess to be the expert, but for whatever reason, Elon took his stake out of the business so that they then transferred from becoming a non-profit to a for-profit model instead, and then create a partnership with Microsoft. And of course, it went massive from there. I think the reason it's been so successful is it kind of it polarizes. So on the one side, it does strike fear into people because, especially with the release of ChatGPT 4, we have an intelligent something being able to think in a way that could be perceived as thinking like a human being, right? And we've not really had anything like that before that is as able to chat with a person as before. But on the other side of things, I think a lot of people have become very excited. So, there were endless YouTube posts and YouTube videos when ChatGPT came out saying, here's 20 ways that you can make money from ChatGPT without having to do anything. You see what I mean? So it really caught the attention of two sort of polar sides of the spectrum, saying, on the one side, it's scary because of how intelligent it is, but on the other side, look at how much opportunity there is. And I think it's just built momentum over time because obviously, I talk a lot about it. It is very, very capable. So that's my view, at least.
Yeah. And just keep these in mind. You don't have to answer these directly. So these are the things I would want to get out as you go through your ChatGPT 101 for finance. Can you kind of just weave in like, okay, this is what it is, and these are the common misconceptions, and this is kind of the reality of it. So I'll let you go through our ChatGPT 101 for finance. And if you need to prompt me, I'm good at moving slides, but just, give me a little head nod or something. And I'll do my best. Thank you.
Yeah, fine. So I'll try and not ramble too much because I could talk about this for ages. Fundamentally, the biggest difference with the different models of ChatGPT is there's a free version and a paid version, like everything these days. The biggest difference is the intelligence of the model. So the free version works on 3.5, which isn't as intelligent as GPT-4. But in simple terms, that basically just means that ChatGPT-4 will produce a better quality of answer than GPT 3.5. The advantage of having the paid version as well is you can connect it to other applications. So we've seen the advent of plugins whereby you can connect it to other apps. And I've got some mentions of some others coming up. And now more recently, we've got the launch of probably one of the most powerful elements of ChatGPT 4 on the paid edition, which is the code interpreter. So that's kind of a quick whistle-stop tour of the two. GPT 3.5 is obviously very fast. It will produce answers very quickly. GPT 4 is a bit slower, but the quality is better.
What's a code interpreter for people like me? I think I know, but
yeah. So essentially, the bare bones of the code interpreter is ChatGPT producing Python code for you.
Yeah.
But I think it's labeled incorrectly because it's a lot more than that. So some of the use cases are actually having it sanitize and tidy up an Excel document for you, or produce data visualizations. You wouldn't necessarily know from a code interpreter that it can produce visualizations. So I think they missed a trick with the terminology. But essentially, when you're querying it, it's producing code in the background to be able to produce the results.
Okay.
You can get that code, but that's essentially what it is. Yeah. So on this slide then, as I mentioned previously when we were sort of demystifying that terminology, is generative AI by its very nature can produce varying results. So you've got to know how to ask good questions to get good answers. So the reason I say it's both more intelligent and less intelligent than us is when you look at the volume of data that it's trained on in terms of, academic articles, websites, or whatever, it has been, trained on more information than we could probably read and absorb in a lifetime. But it's less intelligent than us because it doesn't understand context. Yeah, so we can't just ask generic questions because it's not going to know what sort of answer to give. So the methodology we'll go through is just how you can get those best outputs. Now, the reason I use the term fish is because if we were just to give a fisherman the instruction, go find me a fish, they've got an entire ocean to fish in, right? If you narrow it down and say, I want a white fish, okay, fine. There might be a specific area. I want a white Pacific fish, fine. I know where to, if I want one that I can eat in batter, every stage of that descriptive journey, we're narrowing down our criteria so that we know exactly what fish that we want to get so that we can then batter and eat in the way that we have fish and chips over here in the UK. But what we talk about now is crafting prompts. You may have heard the term prompt engineering. My prompt methodology, similar to some others out there, but my acronym is SPICES to make it a lot easier to understand. So you need to give it a scenario. So it needs to understand the context, so what am I acting as? What is the situation? So the example there, working in a finance team is part of a small retail business. Yeah. So it's trained with data that might pertain to retail businesses. It's trained with data that it knows about finance teams. They've got the profile. So what profile do you want it to assume? So in this instance, financial controller. What information do we want to provide it? So you are tasked with building a month end. It could also be instruction. They're interchangeable there. Command, provide a step-by-step process, including milestones, subtasks, and dependencies. So we're looking to build up a bit of a schedule here. You can give it examples, so it's got something to work with. Again, you're narrowing down the output that you want it to give. And then the structure at the end is the type of output. So normally you ask ChatGPT a question, it'll either produce a paragraph or a list of bullet points. What a lot of people don't know is that it can actually produce a lot of different varying outputs. So if you say output in table form, it will give you a table in a similar format to what you'd see in it.
Now, do you use more than one prompt? So let's say I type in, you work in finance. Do I want to give it multiple prompts before it does anything, or do I need just one prompt?
So you can do one long prompt. Yeah,
okay.
So what you see on screen here is just breaking it down, but from you work in finance through to output in table form could all be one prompt.
Okay.
So that's absolutely fine. So this is an example of an average prompt versus a good one. So if you look at the image on the right, the top right there, which is just produce a month-end routine for your finance team. So there is some data there. It might know what month-end it is. It might know the perspective of a finance team. But you've not really given any instruction on the output. And what it's producing is pretty generic. Yeah. So it's done decent. Don't get me wrong. Notice we're still using the free version. Nothing that I've done by way of example here is the paid version, apart from some of the points in the slides that we're going on to. But it just ties back to that, ask it a basic question, get a basic answer. When we share the slides after the fact, you'll see link to chat here. That's a link to the conversation because you can now share chats from ChatGPT. So if people get their hands on the PDF of this presentation, I'm assuming it will be shared after the fact. Click on the hyperlinks and it will take you through to there. So this is the prompt that we just built using that SPICES framework. So you can see at the top, we've changed the prompt and we've got a much better output. Yeah, so we've got steps, but then we've also got milestones, dependencies, and subtasks as well. Yeah, so just an example of an average versus a good prompt. Hopefully that will make sense. All right. As I say, got any questions about prompting, anything like that, connect with me on LinkedIn, and there's some links to some further resources at the end as well. Moving on to some of the perks of using the paid version. And again, I'm not affiliated with OpenAI in any way. I pay for the paid version myself, just because it gives me more use cases and it gives me more capability. So one of the perks that we mentioned earlier on was the concept of plugins. I'm hoping to release a guide on this in not too long. But you extend the capability of ChatGPT by being able to Q&A the other applications that you might use already. Yeah, people might be familiar with Zapier as an integration platform. You can connect ChatGPT to Zapier to then connect to other apps. So in theory, you can chat via ChatGPT to Xero to recall invoice information, for example. So that's one example. ChatGPT and generative AI is generally pretty poor until they release the code interpreter at the sort of really precise numbers and sort of computational intelligence type stuff. So from a numbers accuracy and statistical accuracy perspective, it's always been quite limited. But you now connect it to Wolfram Alpha, and that solves that problem. And then there's just some other examples of plugins there. Notable is probably one of my favorites. So you can connect ChatGPT to Notable, feed it with some data, and then you can also, produce visualizations and that sort of thing.
Sorry to interrupt you. Let me ask you, people were asking and I want to know myself. When it first came out, there was all these things about it's not connected to the internet. The data is only up through whatever the year is. Yep. Is the newest version automatically pulling data, or do you have to have a plugin or Chrome extension to get that access to all the data on the internet?
Okay, so that ties in quite nicely with a point that's not on the slide, but we need to be mindful of from a data protection perspective as well. So with the paid for pro version of ChatGPT, for a time, there was a model that you could connect to Bing due to the relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI. So you could use the advanced model connected to the internet. Mm-hmm. They've since turned that off recently. I think there was a bit of a legal issue that, again, I don't know the full story with, but right now you can't connect ChatGPT to the internet, so it is still only trained up to 2021, and it will tell you that when you prompt it. If you use something like Link Reader, for example, then you can connect it to the internet.
Okay.
Yeah. Next on then is the code interpreter piece. So this is a post I did quite recently when they released it to the public. Is it your new data scientist? People can have a play and let me know. But this further extends the capability whereby you can connect ChatGPT and your data to machine learning algorithms to make predictions. You can clean reformat data in Excel. You can analyze complex data, produce visuals, and so on and so forth. Because traditionally, ChatGPT wouldn't produce any sort of visual representation. If you ask it a question, it would be text only. With the code interpreter now, if you're feeding it financial data, you can produce financial visuals off the back of it. It's very intelligent.
Yeah. Where are they at? I know it's maybe still going on. There's obviously some concerns is uploading data. Where do you think they're making any progress there, or where do you think we're going there?
Yeah, so sorry, I missed that piece out, didn't I? I teed that up, didn't I? But I didn't actually mention the data protection piece. So yeah, what I was going to say is with all of the plugins, check the data policy of the plugins that you're using. SOC 2 is always a good thing to look out for, SOC 2. So that's a data compliance standard that people can look out for. My recommendation, though, is that you don't ever upload sensitive data. Yeah, so you anonymize your data or you use dummy data. In the case of code interpreter, if you are producing visualizations, you can just copy the code and you can put it in a different environment that's more secure. One of the people that I'm going to mention to follow a little bit later on has done quite a lot of work around this. So if you follow him and look at his posts, he does a lot more around that data piece as well. All right. So now we're looking at sort of can versus can't in terms of automation. So this plays, I guess, into the theme of the webinar, which is, should we be scared? Should we not be scared? I will still, hang my hat on the statement that, it's not replacement, it's repurposing so that we can all have a better life. If I can work a 4-day week, I'm all for that. So I'm excited rather than scared. I mean, I do have anxiety just at the rate that all of these applications are being developed. I struggle keeping up. I've got a slide on some other AI applications that aren't ChatGPT coming up in a second. But fundamentally, what can you do depends on the model you're using and depends whether you've got the paid version or not. There are other AI out. So Bard, for example, is free. Google Bard does a lot of the capability that ChatGPT does. Obviously, you don't have access to plugins or code interpreter. Bard does have basic plugins, but not in the same way that ChatGPT does. And then there's others. I think we've got some examples on the next slide. But you can see some of the use cases on the left. Sorry, Ernie, could we just go back a second? Apologies. So some of the use cases there, and we'll share the slides afterwards, but you can see I've categorized it into yes, no for what the different models can and can't do. And then when you start getting into complex arithmetic and data analysis, that's when you need to then go into plugin and code interpreter territory. So I'd say from a document creation, so, produce me an employee onboarding document, or as we saw previously, create me a month-end routine with dependencies. That's fine with any version of ChatGPT. But as soon as you start getting into data, complex arithmetic, connecting to other applications, that's when you need the pro version with either plugins or the code interpreter. Sorry, Ernie.
Sorry, no worries.
Cool. So what can't we do? And I appreciate the list looks smaller compared to the last slide that we were on. But actually, the type of task for what it can't automate is actually quite a lot bigger than a lot of the little tasks that we can automate. So at the top of that, human judgment, so yes, ChatGPT, if you're using code interpreter, can do visualization. It can help you make predictions. It can help you do analysis, but the focus there is on help you. Yeah, it's up to you to take that away with your knowledge of finance and your experience in the industry to either say, is that correct? Do I agree with that statement? And B, is this useful to me? Is it actionable? So there always needs to be that judgment. There is still limitations with a lot of these AI models in what you can and can't connect to, so a lot of these models won't yet connect with live data, unless you're using something like Zapier, in which case it has cost implications, which aren't always ideal. You can set up your own private tenants whereby you can run some of this AI, especially if you're a large company with a large IT team, for example. But there are still limitations in terms of getting live data into the models. And with the data protection concerns, there's a question over to whether you want to get live data in or not. Yeah. And then we mentioned previously, with it being generative, it is not a type of AI that you could train it to do the same thing every time unless you trained your own bot. But my recommendation there is if you've got repeat work that needs to have consistent outputs, you're much better off using something like a bot that will just do some sort of robotic process automation activity than you are trying to automate things with a generative AI model like ChatGPT or Google Bard, for example. All right. So I mentioned before, there's a lot more tools out there. So as I say, you've got the link there in the presentation that you can pick up on this. So it's just an example there. Every single section there outside of the ChatGPT sections at the top is an AI tool that has been built for a specific use case. Everything from soft skills through to data through to presentations. I do posts on how you can use AI to produce 90% of your presentations, for example. Not that I'd recommend that you do it all the time, but I just want to really enforce that AI now is much wider than just generative AI and ChatGPT. Generative AI is helping advance these AI tools, but there is a whole ecosystem of additional applications that you now have access to in the marketplace. This is why I say I get AI anxiety, because just the rate of companies producing these tools is absolutely unbelievable. But the same principles remain the same. A tool needs to exist to solve a problem. Yeah, so there's no point in just adopting AI for the sake of adopting AI, as to actually get you to a better place.
It kind of made me afraid of how many things I'm inefficient at, right? When I look at all these things, I'm like, wow, I have a lot of work to do on myself, So that's why it scared me a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I suppose one of the last slides from me before we go on to additional resources is how do we make sure that it's right size? So we've got to look at the size of our team and our bandwidth. My recommendation is, start having a play to begin with, use the free version of ChatGPT without sensitive data, experiment with some of these other AI tools for specific use cases. One of the easiest things that you can do is use something like an Otter AI or a Fireflies AI, which will join your meetings and it will automatically transcribe and put in next steps for you. These are so little in terms of commitment, but can be transformational in terms of not having to write up meeting minutes, not having to write up notes. And you find that as soon as you start freeing up time in small areas, that then frees up more time for you to start, biting off bigger chunks of where you can automate in other areas as well. And as I said previously, AI isn't the answer to everything. There are other tools. You'd never use AI for some use cases as we described previously in the presentation. So make sure you focus on the right tools for the right task. If you do have a big IT team and you are interested in involving so that you can start leveraging AI for your specific data in your specific business, then again, Christian Martinez is a great contact. I've got a link to his profile on one of the next slides. But you can set up your own private tenant. If you're already using Microsoft Azure, you can set up a generative AI model there. You can run ChatGPT with your data, with your company data, and be happy that it's more secure. Not always a facility for smaller businesses, though. Yeah, so that's why we talk about right sizing, right? So my recommendation, even if you are a large organization with an IT team, is that you still test the water, start small to the point where you start looking at things more seriously and start building more of a mature AI infrastructure around your business. All right. So you've got links to my stuff at the top there. I won't talk about me. I've talked enough on this presentation. So the one thing I will note, though, is the Ultimate GPT framework, which extends some of the topics that we've spoken about today. You can get on that straight away. And if you just enter 100% at checkout, you'll get that for free as my gift to you guys. Other people to follow. So these guys are all pretty teched up. They've all got varying levels of expertise based on their experience. If you are more interested in sort of the AI, specifically ChatGPT, then Nicolas Boucher is doing quite a lot on that. He did a collab with Soof on PowerPoint. So there's some PowerPoint cheat sheets and guides going on there as well. Christian Martinez, he's the finance automation manager at Kraft Heinz. So he's very bought into the concept of machine learning, data analysis. He uses it as part of his day-to-day. He's the one to follow for data protection, making sure that you're being very careful with the data that you don't put into ChatGPT. Paul Barnhurst, I know, Ernie, you know Paul very well. He's just released a new podcast, Financial Modelers Corner, I think it's called. So definitely check him out. And then Chris Riley, he's just recently updated his newsletter and his branding, and he's providing training around financial modeling and all that sort of stuff as well. So 6 people there for you to follow straight away to start getting some immediate value from the wider network, I guess.
Perfect. Thank you, Adam, so much for your insights and your great content. Adam has great content. I think the point that we make on this slide is you should look for more than one resource, as you should with all your professional development, right? There's a lot of good people out there. People have their niches. And so we talked about finance. Now we're going to talk about, potential role. And it's already been playing automation and AI in AP automation software. My view is that a lot of this ChatGPT and generative technology is going to be embedded in the solutions that you see, and you're not going to have to worry about it. Already seeing the tip of that spear in accounts payable, from what I understand. So I think over the next couple of years, you should know about it, but it's going to be embedded into the software. That's my opinion. So let's talk about the lay of the land. I've got some research here that I'm going to share. I'm going to share this preview. It's an exciting time to be in accounts payable. You have a once and a probably ever to redefine your value proposition. So what we'll look at is what's a strategic role of AP this year. Do the teams have the resources to do that, right? Are they being able to spend more time given the extra time that they have? What are some of the inherent barriers that they might face? And then what the role can technology play in allowing you to optimize strategic value delivered by AP at your company, which is changing for the vast majority. So you see the strategic role of AP is increasing. We had over 250 responses. This number has been consistent over the last 3 years. It was highest when we were getting into COVID, but we're still seeing that. So strategic role is increasing. That's awesome. What about the responsibilities? We also have seen research. I've seen my research and other research. It's increasing. You got more strategic role, more responsibilities. The important point is that you're going to have more time to spend on strategic activities. That's one piece. Then the other pieces are, do we have the technology, process, and people we need to deliver to these increased expectations and the opportunity to have that seat at the strategic table, which in all honesty, when I was in Treasury, I didn't know if AP would ever get there. The last 3 to 5 years have been transformational, which is great to see. So again, it's more strategic role, more responsibilities, more time spent. I've seen this across surveys. It's exciting. What else? Oh, we're going to have more invoices are going to be more complex, right? Or it's going to be more to process. So we're going to have more to do. So it's incredibly important that we have automation and visibility and tools to collaborate, because more is expected of us. We're going to have more to do just in terms of our processing and complexity, but on the backside of improving supplier relationships, taking more control over how and when we make payments. So, we're having increased responsibilities, invoice processes. So the bar is higher, not only in what we consider standard operations, but also in terms of the strategic knowledge that people are expecting from us. So that's exciting. We talked about AP staff. Again, this is from my survey, another survey of mine, adding employees, right? There is a big push towards technology upgrades. So if this is something you're looking at, look at it hard. It should be looked at. Even if you already have a solution in place, you should be looking at that and making sure you're getting the ROI that you deserve. So we'll talk about a lot of the benefits. You should expect all of these benefits. And so sometimes it's a matter of them not being communicated. Sometimes it's a matter of they don't exist. If they don't exist, ask your partner, when are you going to roll these out? How are you managing your technology upgrades, your functionality upgrades? How are you doing that? Are you a partner? Is it customer success, or is it just, I'm going to get you on your contract and tell you to go? It's a little more risky to do that because subscription-based models, but it's definitely something that's important. And the opportunities there's more expected of you, especially with COVID. CFOs are much more willing to invest in technology from what I've seen. So let's talk about what strategic AP looks like. Sometimes I say we throw these terms around. So what does this look like? I guess what this is, it's also like, what do you need, right? And then what are the outcomes? What are we trying to do? You want visibility into all AP processing communications, no visibility, work in silos, you're going to have bottlenecks, you're going to have inefficiencies, communications, you're going to have issues with suppliers, you're going to be spending time on the phone, you're going to have issues, especially if you're in manufacturing. Oops, there's a supply chain glut. Do my suppliers like me? I certainly hope so, right? Why are we making payments? When and why? We want minimal processes. We need to remove friction from approval workflows. There's a lot of people involved in the AP processes end to end if you've never looked at it. So we don't want to have our managers and CFOs and treasury folks wasting time trying to figure out, oh, I got to approve something. Oh, I don't have the backup. Oh, I can't do that remotely. So that's important. This is something that doesn't get talked about enough. Strategic AP means optimizing your payment type mix. So I've done a lot of research on this. A lot of companies only pay people because it's a way they've always done it. They just do a check. There's no strategic decision behind it. You should always look to collaborate with your suppliers, how you pay them. If nothing else, get them off a check, get them to an ACH, or if it makes sense on both sides, get them to some sort of virtual or ghost card that has a rebate. You need to invest in your supplier relationships, communicate with them, because AP done well on your side means AR done well on their side. And we want to be able to count on those relationships when there is friction on either end of the spectrum caused by things like COVID and supply chain disruptions. You want to facilitate collaboration with Treasury. The strategic part of AP in my mind is, okay, we are able to process payments efficiently, right? We need to maximize the control of payment timing, right? Why are we doing check runs? Why are we doing it only Thursday? What's the value to us, the cost of money? We want to maximize the control of payment times, checks, ACH, any kind of cards those are. And we also need to collaborate with Treasury to make sure that we are making our payments securely, right? What are the risks? What are the risk exposures? So there's different risk exposures. There's cost differences in payment types, and there's also risk differences as well. So we need to be working, facilitating, collaborating with Treasury. And then another, I didn't mention well enough, forecasting. We need to forecast those AP-related cash movements. That allows us to optimize our cash flow. And your Treasury folks love cash forecasting. So if you can help them with their cash forecast, they will take you out to lunch for pizza probably every day. So that's good for them. So what does that look like in terms of theoretically, right? You got to have internal collaboration. If I look at surveys, there's a lot of silos that exist. We want visibility into all those processes. People need visibility into all supplier reactions within and across departments. We need to be managing those interactions with suppliers. What's the reason? What's the tone? Are we having the same conversations over and over? Why are we having them? Are we categorizing those disputes? How are we managing those? So there's continuous improvement environment. We want to make sure that people have the right dashboards and they have the right reports for what they're trying to do to impact the strategic value offered by AP. There's a lot of people that are different. You have AP specialists, managers. I've seen reports, they go to controllers. Should go to Treasury. They got to go to procurement. So we need to collaborate. And then again, we need to collaborate with Treasury. So it's very important for internal collaboration. And these are the things that make it possible. And then we need to collaborate with suppliers. We need to communicate the value to them, right? We need to build a relationship. More efficient AP means more efficient AR. Invest in understanding the challenges of your suppliers. What can you do better? Are you getting them the remittance information they need when they need it? Communicate the benefits of electronification, educate them on the value of electronic payments. When they suddenly realize they don't need checks, sorry if there's banks on here, lock boxes, or they're still needed in some cases, but a lot of that was for remittance information. And then strategically looking at the timing of cash movements, you identify your opportunities for your discount opportunities. So that's what strategic AP looks like. So let me go ahead and launch our next poll here. All right. Launch that for us here. Asking us where your company's at in terms of AP automation. You've been doing it over a year. You started. you're in the discovery phase, you're vetting solutions, or you just see no plans or see no benefits. Just to kind of level set it as I dive in here on the technology side, we saw the challenges. We talked about some of the benefits and what that looks like. In some of these, as what I was talking about, you can see you definitely need to leverage the right technology to make those decisions possible. And so let's go ahead and leave the polling question up for, let's see, everyone, come on. Everybody can push the button here. All right, let's go ahead and give you guys another few seconds and we'll take a quick peek at the results, and then we'll take a look at what AP automation looks like across all the dimensions and what the technology looks like at a high level. Let's go ahead and 1 second here. All right, let's end the poll. Let's go ahead and share the results here. So we've got a good percentage of you have been doing it over a year. Those of you that have been already doing it, I ask you to take a look in the mirror and see if you're getting the value out of it that you deserve. And if you started as well, you're in the discovery phase. Hopefully we are incentivizing you on how to make that business case, right? And then how to communicate that business case. And if you're going to vet solutions, how to do that. And if you have no plans, see no benefits, hopefully we're showing you that there's definitely benefits. Companies of all sizes across all industries are certainly realizing the values to that. So I also want to talk about just, when you're quantifying the benefits, again, I want to make that point once again. You're going to see the efficiency benefits, right? What does it cost to process an invoice? If you're not doing that, I strongly encourage you to do that. You're going to look at time savings, approvers within and across accounts payable. And you're also going to look at the productivity drag that is removed related to the inefficient amount of time people are spending, and put some values on that. So you want to make sure when you're doing that cost benefit analysis here, that those are some of the impacts here. Adam, let me go ahead and bring you in here. In your experience, what you've seen about AP automation and some of the drivers, and maybe some of the things I might have missed so far.
Yeah, it's all valid stuff. I think it's always worth mentioning is there's always different levels as well. So I find there's different entry points. So, from an AP invoice perspective, you can do your standard OCR, capture that. But obviously the more advanced tool, the more of your sort of, procure to pay process you can encompass within that. So it can sometimes do a really good job at joining the dots, not just for finance, but also bringing in, say, people that need to raise POs from other departments as well. So it's kind of extending that outside sort of just the remit into other areas of the business as well is something else that I've seen.
All right. Thank you. So let's kind of dig in. I kind of touched at a high level. When you're looking at the ROI, there's always a lot of room for improvement in invoice automation. You can imagine this having fewer touch points, less exceptions. You can get less labor intensive invoice data entry, reduce time spent on handling exceptions. Even if you have exceptions, you want to manage that workflow as well. Gain visibility into outstanding invoices. That helps you identify trends, be more strategic. Maybe someone's calling in to get a status update. Allows approvers to make educated decisions. You might only want to have so much exposure to a certain supplier, right, and your supply chain. And then it helps you build stronger relationships with vendors because there's less friction there. You don't have the same conversations. And part of this, which I didn't mention, is having access to the same information. Asymmetries of information also need to be eliminated between you and your suppliers. A lot of times companies are leveraging supplier portals for that. So let's go ahead and launch our next polling question here. All right. Just asking you to share with me, I won't tell, about your state of your company's relationships with your suppliers. To me, as I've communicated, I think it's important you collaborate, communicate, collaborate, look to them with the type and timing of payments, and stay abreast of changes in their area. This especially, I think, was important when COVID came about, right? There are a lot of things going on. We wanted to make sure, how's that going to affect, right, type and timing? We might have to communicate. We might not be able to pay as quickly as we would like. So that communication is incredibly important. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this polling question up for give me another 5 or 10 seconds, then we'll go ahead and take a quick peek at the results here, and then we'll move into the value of payments, which we touched on as well, and automation, how that helps us there. All right, let's go ahead and close the polling question. All right, let's go ahead and share the results. So pretty good, a small sample size. Adam was so good, I think people dropped off when they heard me talk because I'm not as exciting as Adam, but I do my best. So we had, a lot of us have ideal. So that's awesome. We only have decent, but I would say you should try and go for ideal. There's no reason. And technology really facilitates that in many ways. I think a lot of it is the asymmetry of information that's being taken away and the ability to communicate proactively. So I think that's incredibly important as well. So payments automation, again, what we want to do, more control over payments means we can make payments that are more cost effective. We can make payments that mitigate our risk exposures. Some of that's lower cost per transactions, fewer payment errors. Automation technology also helps us proactively manage our payments fraud. That's another webinar, which we might have maybe with my friends at MHC in the future. And then visibility into payment status. Wouldn't it be nice? They ask, where's my payment? You can show them where their payment is. You got to make sure you want them to have that visibility, but you can eliminate a lot of the questions that your folks are spending hours and hours and hours and days over years on by giving them visibility into things like the payment status. So you should be asking your folks, what are the type of questions that you get all the time? Is there any way we can proactively notify, maybe automatic email on what's going on? Save a lot of time. Can't believe how awesome you'll think. There's flyers will think that is from you. And then there's an awful lot of area in terms of document automation where we effectively store that, we effectively share it. We're uploading things, not rekeying things. So process. Another thing which is important is compliance, which is incredibly important, especially in international compliance, but consistency of communication. A lot of the document automation that I see, I think for me, from a Treasury perspective, it brought the invoice to life. So I could pull it up. You want me to approve it? Oh, I can go in here and look at it. I can go all the way back to the PO. And then also that you can have that chain, that full chain, right, of internal controls and see what happened, who happened. And you can make comments. You can communicate within the solution, which is incredibly important. Helps your internal relationships as well. And then we have our supply chain documents. One of the things that amazed me when I hadn't been in the weeds in AP as I did a white paper on POs and PO matching, I was shocked how long that takes, so that this can help us with compliance, reduce costs, and faster reconciliation, 3-way matching, 5-way matching as well. So again, there's many dimensions that we see to the ROI of AP automation. And then it never ends, right? AP automation is the greatest thing except for ChatGPT. Adam thinks that's better, but I don't believe it. All right. So AP and tax compliance as well. Integrates with your ERP, improved regulatory compliance, accessibility to vital documents, and just that productivity drag goes away. To me, another benefit to this is auditors, getting them the information that they need, communicating with them in these vital documents, especially with tax. Maybe, I hope you don't ever have an audit, but especially if you're going into new countries and there's new regulations going on, we need to make sure our documents are up to date. And then you can tie all the documents together with a given supplier. So that's incredibly important as well, as some of those changes might be going on. You pull up the supplier from the master, boom, you can access all the documents in compliance, what they submitted and things of that nature. So including you can actually put things on like financials and things like that and keep track of them and get that all in one place, which is incredibly valuable in managing those relationships. So I'm going to do something I think is too unusual when we're talking about AP, specific recommendations for any company, any size, any industry. It all starts with that deep and honest dive in your entire P2P process. If you have not done that, I would recommend you do this at least yearly. But when you start to look at every person, every process, every technology, for those of us who are a little older, We had to do this for Sarbanes-Oxley, but you can see all the places where problems can exist and identify opportunities. It gives you everyone this mindset, ownership. We want to have a continuous improvement. You want to look at the approval workflows are really important. Those have a big impact. Your approvers and managers are executives, right? We don't want to have them spending too much time in AP, not that it's not important. Focus on communication and collaboration. I've talked a lot about this communication internally, within AP, beyond AP, and with your suppliers. You can't have collaboration until you have effective communication. So let's get that communication right. That facilitates collaboration, and technology facilitates collaboration since we can message into it and we have visibility into it. And then if you're not an AP, maybe you're Treasury, CFO, ensure they have the data and systems necessary they need, right, to manage to these performance metrics, help them decide what they are. If that's not a focus of your AP team, we need to teach them the language of finance. They don't need to learn Python. Adam, they don't need to learn Python, but they need to learn, these other metrics that we have. So those are all important. If you're looking to invest in AP automation, or if you still have it, ensure that you're getting all the benefits possible, that you're seeing, that you're actually getting customer success support and not just a transaction relationship. And then again, if you invested in this, make sure that you set benchmarks, continually review, solicit feedback. So continually report on the value, toot your own horn. Wow. Oh, by the way, just as a reminder, after we invested in AP automation 4 years ago, we've realized a $500,000 benefit to the bottom line, which you wouldn't have realized if you wouldn't have invested in AP automation. So you got to learn how to manage and communicate all of those things as well. So I'm going to go ahead and launch polling question here before we make some closing comments here. Just asking you if you're interested to learn more about how technology can help your company deliver more value from accounts payable. And even if you have an AP automation solution in place, I think this is something that should be incredibly interesting to you and your team as well. Adam, I'm going to go ahead and bring you in here and let you leave us with a couple of your final thoughts here. Give us like 2 or 3 things that you would like people from your section to really take away from the webinar, if you would, please.
Thanks, Ernie. Yeah, I'd just come back to that right sizing point. Think about timing, think about the challenges, think about the use cases, and go from there. We don't want to implement technology for technology's sake. We want to make sure that there's a use case, as we've spoken about, that there is an ROI, and it starts with baby steps, right? So focus on the low hanging fruit and the quick wins before you get too complicated. So that's my perspective.
Oh, thank you. And for me, it's just that it's a very exciting time to be in accounts payable. Embrace this opportunity and leverage technology to help your company optimize the value delivered from accounts payable. I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor back over to our host and let Sam take us home. I think he has a few closing comments for us. Sam?
Great. Appreciate it, Ernie and Adam. Just wanted to give you guys a big thank you for joining us today. Ernie and Adam, you guys definitely shared some great insights on how valuable, all of these tools can be for, these teams. And that's going to do it. Just thank you all for joining. If you're interested in learning more about what's going on at MHC, you can register for our monthly newsletter and check out our website. And like I said, you guys will be receiving a survey and then reminders about upcoming webinars and other thought leadership content. Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me, guys. Cheers.